Hi, I'm Becky Lyons. Welcome to Jesus Speaks in the Book of Mormon and in Dreams. So today we are reading from Alma chapter 47. Amalickiah uses treachery, murder, and intrigue to become the king of the Lamanites. The Nephite dissenters are more wicked and more ferocious than the Lamanites. So if you don't remember from the last chapter, Amalickiah comes into the scene and he's an antichrist. He was leading people away with many flattering words and using cunning, deceptive devices of the devil. He led away the hearts of the people to do sin and wickedness before God, and he was purposely destroying the church of God, kind of a lot like Alma and Korihor, Alma the Younger and Korihor before Alma saw the angel, and Korihor and all these other antichrists we've been reading about. And he wanted to take away their foundations of liberty. He wanted to take away their freedom and their religious freedom as well. So this guy is basically Satan incarnate, right? And so after the Amalickiah was doing this, and Amalickiah was conspiring to be the king, that made Captain Moroni really angry. And so Captain Moroni ripped off part of his coat, and he wrote on this, and then he made a flag out of it, and then he put on the flag defending, so in the memory of our God, and then defense of our God, and defense of our religion, our freedom, and our peace, and our wives and our children. And then he fastened it and he put it up on a pole. And so Moroni was basically saying, okay, me and my army, we're going to lay down our lives to defend God, to defend our liberty and our religious freedom, to defend our peace and defend our families and our wives and our children. And we will give our lives to the death for all of these things. So are you and I willing to give our lives for the same thing that Captain Moroni was willing to do? And then yesterday I challenged you and me to write out your own flag and write down what is important to you and what you're willing to lay your life down for as well. But anyway, I wanted to give you a little bit about what yesterday's chapter was. I'll just read you the synopsis from yesterday because it'll feed into what we're doing today, so you know what went on in the last chapter. Amalickiah conspires to be the king. Captain Moroni raises up the title of liberty, what I just read about. He rallies the people to defend Christ, to defend their religion, to defend their lands, to defend their freedom, to defend peace. True believers are called Christians or disciples of Christ. And then Amalickiah and the dissenters flee to the land of Nephi. Those who will not support the cause of freedom are put to death. So now we'll go on to chapter 47. So you know what happened in the previous chapter, because that feeds into the chapter. If you don't know what happened in the last chapter, you're not going to know what's going on in this one. Amalickiah uses treachery, murder, and intrigue to become the king of the Lamanites. The Nephite dissenters are more wicked and more ferocious than Lamanites. Now we will return in our record to Amalickiah and those who had fled with him into the wilderness, for behold, he had taken those who went with him, and he went up to the land of Nephi among the Lamanites, and he did stir up the Lamanites to anger against the people of Nephi, insomuch that the king of the Lamanites sent a proclamation throughout all of the land among all the people that they should gather themselves together again to go battle against the Nephites. When the proclamations had gone forth from the king, they were exceedingly afraid. They feared to displease the king, and they also feared to go to battle against the Nephites, lest they should lose their lives. And it came to pass that they would not, or the more part of them would not, obey the commandments of the king. So the Lamanites were afraid to go to battle against the Nephites because of what had just happened and how the Nephites had won against double the amount of the Lamanites, and they didn't want to have that happen. So they ignored what the king was commanding them to do. They didn't want to go to battle with the Nephites because they knew that Captain Moroni loved and served God, and that God was on Captain Moroni's side. So they figured out that probably wouldn't turn out well for them. Now it came to pass that the king was wroth and angry because of the disobedience of the people. Therefore he gave Amalickiah the command of that part of his army which was obedient to his commandments, and commanded him he should go forth and compel them to arms. So Amalickiah, he's already plotting to kill the king and to take over as the king right here. So the king is commanding Amalickiah to tell the part of the army that's going to be obedient to the king's commands to do what the king says, that he should go forth and tell them to get their arms and to go to war and go to battle against the Nephites. Now behold, this was the desire of Malachiah, for he being a very subtle man to do evil, therefore he laid the plan of his heart to dethrone the king of the Lamanites. So he's already plotting the death of the king so he can be king. In verse 5, now he had got the command of these parts of the Lamanites who were in favor of the king, and he sought to gain favor of those who were not obedient. Therefore he went forward to that place which he called Onidah, for thither had all the Lamanites fled, for they discovered the army coming, and supposing that they were coming to destroy them, therefore they had fled to Onidah, to the place of arms. And they had appointed a man to be the king and leader over them. Being fixed in their minds, they determined resolution that they would not be subjected to go against the Nephites. And they had gathered themselves together up on the top of the mount, which it was called Antipas, in preparation to go to battle. Now, it was not Amalickiah's intention to give them battle according to the commandments of the king, so he wasn't going to tell them to go to battle like the king instructed. He has another plot and plan he's going to tell them. But behold, it was Amalickiah's intention to gain favor with the armies of the Lamanites, that he might place himself at their head and dethrone the king and take possession of the kingdom. So this is his little plot. He's going to gain favor of the armies of the Lamanites, and he's going to take over, and he wants to be their head, and he wants to dethrone the king so he can become king and take over the kingdom. That's exactly what he does by evil, cunning devices of the devil. Behold, it came to pass that Amalickiah caused his army to pitch their tents in the valley which was near the Mount Antipas. When it was night, Amalickiah sent a secret embassy into the Mount Antipas, desiring that the leader of those who were on the mount, whose name was Lehonti. So he sent a secret embassy to Mount Antipas, desiring that the leader on the mount, whose Lehonti, that Lehonti should come down to the foot of the mountain, for he desired to speak with him. So when Lehonti received the message, he durst not go down to the foot of the mountain. And Amalickiah sent again the second time to tell him to come down to the foot of the mountain, desiring him to come down. And it came to pass, Lehonti would not come down from the mountain. And then he sent the message the third time for Lehonti to come down from the mountain. And it came to pass that Amalickiah found that he could not get Lehonti to come down from off the mountain. So he went up to the mount. So Amalickiah decided to go up to the mountain himself, since Lehonti would not come down from the mountain. And Amalickiah went nearly to Lehonti's camp. He sent again for the fourth time his message to Lehonti to tell him to come down from the mountain, desiring that Lehonti would come down and that he would bring his guards with him. So this is where Lehonti made the mistake. Lehonti is going to get into lots of trouble from coming down the mountain. That's basically like Satan telling you to come down the mountain to meet with him. So Lehonti had come down the mountain with his guards to Amalickiah, that Amalickiah desired him to come down with his army in the nighttime and surround those men in their camps, over whom the king had given command, that he would deliver them up into Lehonti's hands, if he would make him, Amalickiah, a second leader over the whole army. So let's read that again. So Lehonti came to the guards to Amalickiah. Amalickiah desired Lehonti to come down the mountain with his army in the middle of the night to surround the men in their camps, whom the king had given commands to go fight the Nephites, that he would deliver them to Lehonti's hands. And then it would make Amalickiah a second leader over the whole army, and it goes along with his little plot to become a king. So Lehonti came down with his men and surrounded the men of Amalickiah. So that day, before they awoke at the dawn of day, they were surrounded by the armies of Lehonti. So he had a little evil plan there. Lehonti came down to surround, So Lehonti came down from the mountain, and then the men of Amalickiah were surrounding the armies of Lehonti. So that was his little evil plan to take over. So when they saw that they were surrounded, they pled with Amalickiah that he would allow them to fall in with their brethren, that they may not be destroyed. Now, this was the very thing that Amalickiah desired and wanted them to do. So it came to pass, he delivered his men contrary to the commands of the king. So now this was the thing that Amalickiah had desired, that he might accomplish his designs in dethroning the king. So dethroning the king, and then he'll become the king. It was a custom among the Lamanites, if their chief leader was killed, to appoint a second leader to be their chief leader. Amalickiah caused that one of his servants should administer a poison by degrees to Lehonti until he died. So when Lehonti was dead, the Lamanites appointed Amalickiah to be their leader and their chief commander, which is his whole plot in the first place, to get Lehonti to come down. He was plotting to give him poison and kill him by degrees already. So we're going to stop there. That's exactly half, and then we'll read the second half tomorrow. But Amalickiah is just a type of Satan. So, Satan keeps tempting us, and then Amalickiah was tempting Lehonti. He kept saying, come down the mountain, and he tried to get him to do it 4 times, and finally did it on the 4th time. And then what happened when he came down the 4th time? He administered poison by degrees and killed Lehonti so he could become king. So we can liken that to ourselves. Like, how are we letting Satan talk us into temptations, or talking into giving into sins, or giving into things so he can poison us with sin and poison us with his evil degree by degree by degree? Because Satan doesn't get you to okay, today I want you to, when you wake up, go rob a bank, and go murder a bunch of people. No. What does Satan do? He gets us to commit a sin, a little sin by degrees, like a little sin and a little bigger sin, and then a medium-sized sin, and then a bigger medium-sized sin, until all of a sudden we're committing the really, really bad, evil sins. And he does it by degrees. So he did the same thing with Lehonti. We can liken that to ourselves. So are we allowing the adversary, we're allowing Satan to tempt us by degrees with little sins and little things, little things that don't seem that bad, and then leading us to greater and greater sins? So we need to stop Satan in his tracks, right? And don't allow him to tempt us with sins by degrees, where we, first we don't think we're doing anything wrong. We're justifying our sins, and we're justifying what we're doing. And then we keep getting more and more until all of a sudden, we've left the covenant path, and we've done things that completely have taken us away from God and Christ. There's a little story about a little frog. This is a good representation of the same story about how Lehonti was killed with poison by degrees. There's a little froggy, and this froggy saw a nice pot on the stove of nice warm water. And so this man told the little froggy to jump in the nice warm water to have a nice warm relaxing bath. So he did. And the frog just laid in the water, said, "Oh, this is so nice." And then the man kept turning it up by degrees, by a little bit. And so then it got warmer, and the frog said, "Oh, it feels so good." And it got warmer, and the frog said, "Oh, this feels so nice." And then all of a sudden it turned from warmer and warmer and warmest to hot. And the frog is like, it's kind of getting hot, but it still feels really good. Then all of a sudden the man turned it all the way up to boiling, and the frog died. And so that's how Satan works with us too. So don't let Satan turn up the sin and the temptations degree by degree. Don't give in to his evil plots to spiritually kill you, just like Amalickiah physically killed Lehonti by degrees. So I'm looking forward to reading the rest with you tomorrow. See you tomorrow.